Hello guys, it's been a long time since I've actually made a video. So today's video is a past paper walkthrough for information and communication technology. This is for paper 1 theory. I know many of you guys have this paper coming on for exams. The code for this paper is 0417/12. This is a May-June 2019 paper. This is for the exam board Cambridge, and the time duration for this paper is 2 hours. So this is just going to be mainly a walkthrough video what the answers are going to be. So it just provides you good revision for exams coming up. Okay, so write your candidate number, center number, and candidate name. Read the instructions. So let's start the video. All right, so write your name, center number, and candidate number. Remember to write using black font. That's very important that you use a black pen for the exams. Then answer all questions. Total mark for this paper. Usually they would write it somewhere here. So I'm assuming this is total 80 marks. 100 marks. 100 marks for a 2019 paper. Alright, so the first question. Computer consists of hardware and software. State what is meant by hardware. So when they're asking you to state what's meant by hardware, think of anything that's physical. Like, let's say computer, your mouse, iPad, anything like that. That is considered to be hardware. So we're just going to write this. This is one of the marking schemes answers that we're going to be writing so that you guys know what to write for exams, official exams. Okay, so this is going to be the answer to this is going to be, this is the physical components of a computer system. Physical components of a computer system. Okay, so this is the definition of what is it meant to be, what is it meant by hardware. Okay, let's move on to the next question. State what is meant by software. So now software is everything like the application you're using. You can think of programs such as social media apps. That's all part of software. The OS operating systems, they're all part of the software side. So let's write some of the definitions of what is meant by software. You can mention that it is the programs for controlling data, for controlling the operation of a computer. That's what you're going to write for 1 mark. Okay, it's a programs for controlling the operation of a computer. You can also say that it is the programs that are used for processing of data. Okay, that's what you're going to write for 1 mark. Let's move on to the next question. There are 2 types of software. Name one of the types of software used by a computer. Now, a computer uses 2 types of software, using system software and application software. So, name one of the 2 types. So, we're just going to be writing system software. Okay? Next question. Name the piece of hardware found in a tablet computer that is both an input and output device. So, if you look and observe a tablet computer, what is something that shows you the output as well as the input? It can't be the microphone, because a microphone is an input device in the tablet. It can be the screen. Can it be the screen? It can be the screen. Actually, if you look at it, you're both touching the screen. You're inputting data into the device. Let's say when you use the keyboard. And how does the touch screen, let's say, function as an output device? It outputs the data of what you have typed. So you're inputting data at the same time you can see the data shown as output. So we can say that a touch screen in a tablet computer is both an input or output device at the same time. Let's move on to the next question. Now, next question is there are many types of data storage. Tick whether the following statements are examples of read-only memory, ROM, random access memory, or hard disk drive, HDD. So now, when you look at this carefully, if you remember some facts about what ROM is read-only memory. So meaning that the data stored in it is not temporary, so meaning it's not lost when the data power is cut off. But in RAM, if the data power is cut off, if the data power is cut off, all the data is lost in RAM, okay? Hard disk drive is just an additional storage method. So we can see that this is for 4 marks. So let's tick the options. It loses its data when the computer is switched off. That is going to be RAM, okay? It is classed as backing storage. That would be HDD. It stores the startup instructions of the computer. That would be the ROM. It temporarily stores the current work of the current user. That will be RAM, okay, because it's a temporary form of storage. Let's move on to the next question. Click 2 items which are used for direct data entry. Direct data entry would be like, it's not a printer. Printer's outputting stuff, so it's going to be RFID. That stands for radio frequency identification, and MICR. Okay, these two are going to be your answers. Okay, it can't be my keyboard, it can't be microphone, it's not mouse or printer. Okay, these are not used for direct data entry. Okay, next question. Alright, so the next question is asking us, an alpine slalom skiing involves a number of skiers racing down a mountain, negotiating obstacles. The time it takes each skier to complete the course is measured. The fastest skier is awarded first place. This involves the use of a number of different sensors to monitor variables. Using words from the list below, complete the following statements. The sensor, okay, so they've given you a list of words, and actually this is a good thing because you can use this to answer questions. Okay, this sensor is used to measure how cold it is on the course. So that'll be obvious. It's a temperature sensor. Temperature is used to measure heat and cold, so you can use a temperature sensor. Okay, this sensor is used to stop the clock when a skier crosses the finish line. So if you read this carefully, that would be I'm assuming it would be a light sensor, hopefully. That's correct. Do correct it in the comments. Next question is, this sensor is used to measure the altitude, height above sea level at the top of the course. That would be pressure. That's a pressure sensor. Okay, let's move on to the next question. So, next question is, skiers take part in 2 separate races. The fastest 30 skiers qualify for the second race. 30 skiers have already completed the course. In order for the next skier to qualify, he has to beat the race time of the skier currently in 30th place. Part of the spreadsheet showing the current standings is shown. So what you're going to do is you're going to write a formula. Okay, you can see that the Excel sheet, you're going to write a formula that can be entered in cell E36 to display Y if the skier has qualified by beating the time of the skier currently in 30th place. If the skier has not qualified, then N is displayed. So this is more of an Excel type. I think now it's changed with the newer codes and all that stuff. So hopefully it's changed. So what we're going to do is we're going to use an if function here. So it's going to be if D36, right, is less than D32. Then what you're going to do is you're going to output Y, comma, and then otherwise if that doesn't happen, you're going to output N, okay? Put that in brackets. This is going to be an answer for 3 marks. This whole thing is 3 marks. The 1 mark is for the if function. The other 1 mark is mentioning the condition that E36 has to beat. Has qualified by beating the time in 30th place. If it's less than, so D36, in order for D36 to beat, it has to have a lower time. So D36 less than D32, that is going to be for 1 mark. If that's happened, then it's a Y. We output Y. Otherwise, if it doesn't happen, we just output N. Okay. So that's 1 mark for those conditions. Let's move on to the next question. Okay, next question is again a question related to Excel. Just before the second run column is deleted as it is no longer required. As the skiers in the second run complete the course, their times are entered into the spreadsheet. The spreadsheet has been changed to display the second run times as shown. So you can see that there's data in this Excel file. The combined times for the first and second runs need to be added to the spreadsheet in a new column between columns E and F. Okay. Describe the steps that you would take to add this new column with the heading combined time. Now, what are the steps we're going to do to answer this question is that the first thing you're going to be doing, I'm just going to zoom out so you can see the question as well. Maybe zoom in like this. Okay, you're gonna what are you gonna do? Three marks, right? I'm assuming, yeah, this is for 3 marks. You're gonna write 3 points here. What you're gonna do is you're gonna select the column F, or any cell in column F. And then what you're gonna do? You're gonna click insert new column. You're gonna click insert new column. Okay. Or you could just say right click and then select insert new column. Then what are you going to do? You're going to select, you're describing the steps. You're going to select cell F2 or F1. Then you're going to type in combined time. You're going to type in combined time. And then you're going to select text wrap. These are some of the steps that you can write for this answer, text wrap. Okay, and then you're going to select text wrap. These are some of the answers that you can write for 3 marks. All right, let's move on to the next question. Write a formula that can be entered into the new cell F3 that adds the time taken to complete the first run to the time taken to complete the second run. So all you're doing in F3 over here, all we're doing is we're just adding the cells D3 and E3 to give us the value in F3. So all you're going to do is just write D3 plus E3. Okay, D3 plus E3. Let's move on to the next question. Okay, when the overall race is completed, the data is sorted into order based on the combined times. The first player skier will be at the top of the list. Part of the final spreadsheet before the data is sorted is shown. The 30th place skier is on row 32. Describe the steps you would take to sort the data to show each skier in their correct position without using their functions. Alright, so describe the steps that we would take. What you're going to do is, the answer is for how many marks? 4 marks. You're going to write 4 points for this question. So I'm going to zoom out so you can see the question. What we're going to do first is we're going to highlight B3 to F32. Then we're going to click on sort. Then what we're going to do, we're going to click sort by column F, and then we're going to click on ascending order. This is some of the answers you can write for 4 marks. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Now the next question is stating that the skiers throughout the season earn world championship points. At the end of the race, the points are calculated for each skier. The winning of the race gains 100 points. The other skiers have their points calculated by subtracting the combined time of the winner from the combined time of the skier, then subtracting this value from the winner's points. Write a formula to be placed in cell G4 to show the skier's points for the race. The formula will be replicated to G32. So now what your answer is going to be G and a dollar sign. G dollar sign and 3 minus F4, cell in F4, minus F dollar sign 3. Okay, this is going to be answer for about 3 marks. Okay, so let's answer the next question. Andinda is a marathon runner. She uses a smartwatch, which is a smaller version of her smartphone. She trains by running in areas near her home. She uses a smartwatch with an inbuilt GPS system to navigate the route she's running. Describe the disadvantages of using a smartwatch in this way. So this is for 4 marks, so we can mention 4 points. So what we can write is that the software in the smartwatch, right? Software in the smartwatch needs to be kept up to date. The next point we can mention is that the loss of satellite signal, right? Loss of satellite signal can be an issue. The other point that we can mention is that let's say problems with battery, or having an empty battery, that could be an issue. Empty battery. The next point that we can mention is that sunlight can make the device unreadable, meaning it can cause, or you can say that programming the smartwatch can slow the runner down, or you can mention the problems with weather. That could be another factor. Electric storms, problems with weather. You can mention that. These are some of the points that you can mention. You can also mention some of these points related to those disadvantages in using the smartwatch in that way. Let's move on to the next question. Name 2 other uses of GPS systems. So, the obvious one is the use in cars, to calculate routes, or it's used in ships. You can mention that, used in ships to locate current position. You can also mention, it's used in agriculture for tractor navigation, or you can just mention any other examples of tracking systems. All right, so let's move on to the next question. Next question is that Ndinda also carries a smartphone strapped to her arm, but finds this is difficult to use when running. A smartphone can be used for communication, either for making phone calls or text messaging. Ndinda stops part way through a run for a rest and wishes to communicate with a friend using the smartphone. Describe why text messaging is a better way for Ndinda to communicate with a friend rather than making a phone call. So, you can say that she may be tired due to the running factor, so she may be tired, so therefore she would be using text messaging. So this is more of an analysis based question. So she would be using text messaging than trying to talk. The other point is that a text message is much more quicker than sending an audio message. So you can mention that as well. A text message is sent quicker than sending an audio message. Okay. The other point is that the text message is sent even though the receiver's phone is turned off, or even if it's out of range. We can mention that. Then we can mention the third last point we can mention is that the text message, I was going to show you guys the question. The text message is more likely to connect as the data footprint is smaller than a phone call. Okay, guys can mention that. You can also mention the other point which I said earlier is that the text message is sent even though the receiver's phone is turned off or not. Even if it's out of range, it would still work. Okay, next question. Tavara's school uses both the internet and an intranet. Careful, these two words mean different things. internet, and internet. Describe 4 disadvantages to students of using the internet compared with the internet. So some of the disadvantages is that the internet is not policed. That's one of the disadvantages. So there's no content filter. Content filter. Sorry. Then the next part is that the material on the internet can be biased. So the material on the internet can be biased. Okay. The third point is that the material on the internet may not be reliable. Okay, it might not suit some people's needs, may not be reliable. And the third one, there are more security issues. When using the internet. Okay. You can also mention that anyone can create a website on the internet, so inaccurate information can be posted. You can also mention that there are more distractions when using the internet. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Next question, email is a service provided by the internet. For each of the following problems associated with email, describe methods of protecting your data. So the first one is spam. So it's a 4 marker. So with spam, what do you do is the first thing, you don't reply. Do not reply to spam mails. To spam emails, okay? Then what are you going to do? The second point is that you're going to use a spam email filter. Then the third thing that you're going to do is you're going to block images. You're going to block images in HTML. Messages, right? As these are used as web beacons. Then the last point is that you do not sign up to commercial any scam mailing lists. Okay, these are some 4 protection methods that you can write for 4 marks. The other point is, like, you can just unclick check boxes when buying items online. Okay, next part is protection against viruses on computer. What you can do is you can scan emails or attachments before opening. Then what you can do is use up-to-date antivirus software. Third point is you can write is that you do not download attachments from unknown sources. And then avoid opening spam mails, because that has related to viruses. Avoid opening spam emails. These are some of the answers for 4 marks. All right, let's move on. Next question, 7. The introduction of computers in an organization's payroll department has affected employees' working patterns. 2 examples of this are part-time working and job sharing. Describe what is meant by part-time working. Part-time working just refers to workers. This is 2 marks, so you have to write 2 points. Workers that work less than full-time, or that work less than limited number of hours. Okay, you can mention that as well. Then you can mention that this could be for fewer hours. The keyword here is fewer. For fewer hours than a full working day or working week. You can also mention that, this could be fewer days than a full working week. Then what is the next part? Describe what is meant by job sharing. Job sharing, 2 marks, is a full-time job which is shared between part-time 2 or more workers. You can mention that 2 or more workers, or between part-time workers. You can say that the one continues to work. You can mention that one continues to work. One continues to work when the other has left. When the other has left. You can also mention that, one could work in the morning, the other one could work in the afternoon, or one could work for 3 days and the other 2 days. These are some of the factors some of the answers that you can write when describing what is meant by job sharing. Next question. The introduction of these computers has had positive and negative effects on payroll department workers. Describe the benefits to workers of introducing computers into their department. So, this is for 4 marks, so you can write 4 points. You can say that the staff are kept more up to date, with their work, You can also mention that there's an increase in job opportunities, You can mention that there's more accurate calculation of wages, or meaning that there are less errors made in the calculations. And you can also mention that the manual tasks, let me just write that properly, the manual tasks are reduced. Okay, these are some of the 4 points that you can write for 4 marks. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Okay, the next question is, internet banking is changing how we carry out banking transactions. Discuss the advantages and disadvantages to the customers of the introduction of internet banking. 6 marks. They're asking you to discuss the advantages and disadvantages. So you're going to write 3 points for advantages and 3 points for disadvantages. Combined total, that should give you 6 marks. Okay, so I'm just going to write here advantages just to show you the difference. Advantages, you can mention that it reduces internet banking. It reduces the cost of traveling to the bank. You don't need to drive all the way to the bank. You can do internet banking. Then it's 24/7 banking, fully operational. And it reduces the time wasted waiting in queues. Okay, because it's internet banking, it's fast. And yeah. You can also mention that the interest rates are usually better when using internet banking, or it's easier to shop around for better bank accounts. You can also mention that disabled people do not have to travel to the bank in order to carry out transaction. People can spend more time doing other activities rather than traveling to the bank. These are some of the advantages they can mention. Other part is disadvantages to internet banking. Less physical banks means that people have to travel further to go to the bank. So if there's not so many bank locations, you can mention that there's a security. Security is an issue as transactions are carried out over the internet. Okay. More risk of farming. Okay. Hopefully you guys know more risk of farming, or let's say fraud. Okay, phishing. Other one is that it's easier to make errors while using internet banking. For example, we can mention that it's easier to make errors when using internet banking. For example, incorrect input data. These are some of the 3 points for writing for disadvantages. You can also mention the most important one is that the user needs a reliable internet connection, and if the internet connection drops during a transaction, there might be issues. So that's some of the disadvantages you can mention for 6 marks. All right, let's move on to the next question. Next question. Expert systems. It's pretty fun, actually. Expert systems have many applications. Name 2 applications that use expert systems. That would be diagnostic systems, and hopefully you guys know this one, chess games. They use expert systems. Careers, tax, all that stuff use expert systems. Next question, take 3 components of an expert system. That would be an interactive user interface. We're not using a spreadsheet. We're not using a monitor. We're not using a printer for this one. We're using a knowledge base. Yes, we're using a knowledge base for an expert system. Search engine, nope. Actuator, that's something physical. Rules base, parameters, for sure. Okay, we're using an interactive user interface, knowledge base, and rules base, which are the 3 components of an expert system. All right, let's move on to the next question. Next question is that a system's life cycle is followed when a new computer system is being created. Check whether the following statements are examples of the analysis stage, the design stage, or the evaluation stage of the system's life cycle. Identifying the problems with the current system. That would be part of the analysis stage. Deciding on testing strategies. That would be on the design stage. Observation of workers using the current system. That would be part of the analysis stage. Comparing the solution, the original task requirements. That would be the evaluation stage. So that's the answers for 4 marks. Let's move on to the next question. Now the next question is a 6 marker. A teacher is planning to develop a presentation to show his younger students aged 5 to 6. Describe the factors which would need to be considered when designing the presentation for these students. 6 marks, 6 points. Okay, so when using the presentation, he should use animation because their age is 5 to 6, right? To keep their attention. Use animations to keep their attentions. They technically it's just to increase their attention span. Then use sound. Use sound to keep them interested because you're trying to get their attention to keep them interested. Then use larger font. The third point is use larger font size so the text is easier to read. Okay? Then use a font that is suitable to the age group. Okay? That is suitable to the age group. Yeah, you can use Calibri instead of text. Instead of Times New Roman. Times New Roman is used in formal writing and all that stuff. Then you can say use more vibrant colors. More vibrant colors should be used. And how many points is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the last point would be short sentences. Nobody wants to read huge paragraphs. Short sentences should be used. This is your answer for 6 marks. You can also mention that, use a font that is easier to read. Make the presentation colorful to keep their attention. You can mention that the language used needs to be simple because they're aged from 5 to 6. You can also mention that the words need to be short and simple. You can also mention that more images than text is needed, and use slide transitions to make it more exciting for these age group. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Next question is a tick box type question. Generic file formats can be used when saving files. Tick 3, generic file formats. That's not going to be .xls, it's going to be .pdf, .rtf, and .csv. Everything that you guys have encountered in the course, okay? Okay, let's move on to the next question. Explain why generic file formats are needed. Okay, part 2 marks. So generic, I'm going to explain that why. Generic file formats, they allow the user they allow the user to save files, so they can be opened in other software. You can also mention that to create a standard so that other software can understand the contents. You can also mention that, example of a file just saved on one type of the device, software being used on another type, for example, a mobile phone to a PC. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Next question, describe the following terms with reference to navigation from a web page. Okay, hyperlink. Hyperlink is a method of accessing other resources, such as web pages, from, or let's say other web pages from current web pages. Accessing other web pages from current web page. The navigation is done by hovering or clicking on the link. You can also mention that clicking on the word, phrase, image, or area of page links one web page to another part of the same web page. Next part, href, is an attribute. It's an attribute within a hyperlink or an anchor. Okay, can be used. You can mention that it can be used to specify the URL of the web page or resource to be used. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Explain the difference between the use of relative file paths and absolute file paths in navigation from a web page. So relative, we're going to describe this, is that relative file paths, they only show the name or file path destination of the file, file path destination of the file. Meaning, whereas absolute file paths, it gives the full web address, or the full path. And absolute, you can mention that absolute always has the domain name, whereas relative, you can mention that relative does not need the domain name. You can also mention that relative finds files in the current site. If you need to find files on a different website, then absolute needs to be used. Absolute starts from the root, and that relative does not require a path, only subfolders. These are some of the points that you can write for 4 marks. Let's move on to the next question. Explain the difference between analog data and digital data. 2 marks, 1 point for each. You can say that analog data is continuous, very important, and digital data is discrete. Okay, digital data is discrete. The other point is that you can mention is that the analog data can only be read. Analog data can only be read by a sensor. And analog data needs to be converted before it is read by the computer. I'm going to give you an example of what this means. Analog data is like right now, like how I'm talking to the microphone. It's human speech. Human speech is being converted into digital data, as which you guys are hearing on the other side. Wherever you guys are listening, the data which I'm saying right now, like the human speech voice of talking into this microphone, is being converted. So what I'm speaking is of some form of an analog data, and when it's converted into what you guys are hearing, is it's done through the conversion of analog data to digital data, because computers can only read zeros and ones only. Okay. You can also mention that analog data is the output from a sensor, and analog data cannot be understood by a computer, and it needs to be converted before it's read by a computer. These are some of the points you can write for 2 marks. Okay, so now the final question is, as our use of the internet increases, e-safety becomes essential. Discuss why e-safety is needed. So the first point that you're going to be writing, this question is for 8 marks, so you're going to be writing 8 points in total. So the first point, actually, we're not going to be numbering this, because in the exam you don't want to number these things. You have to write it as a paragraph. So e-safety protects personal data from people who should not have access to it. That's going to be our first point. The second point is going to be that personal data needs to be kept safe so that others cannot use it against people. Your third point is that it protects sensitive data. The fourth point is going to be use of it is because e-safety protects vulnerable people. Fifth point is going to be that it protects other people's views, and e-safety trains users to be responsible on the internet, as well as we can mention that it covers a number of electronic devices like computers, tablets, mobile phones, and gaming consoles. The final point that you're going to mention is that you need to know how to report problems on the internet. Some other stuff that you can mention is that e-safety, it reduces the risks when information communication technology is being used on social media sites, online gaming platforms, where people assume that these platforms are safe. You can also mention that issues, example, access of personal data, spreading rumors, or that form. These are some of the points that you can mention to discuss why the use of e-safety is needed. This seems to be the final part of the paper. If you guys have enjoyed the video, please do like, share, and subscribe to the channel. It really helps a lot. And do comment below on what your thoughts are about the video. And I think that's it. Alright. Bye, guys.